Okay, I'm about to whine like a bitch who can't find her bottle of scotch, but it occurred to me as I was getting this ready that there's something that's just a little bit more important, and that something is Pony Boy. You might have heard the term before, but you probably don't know what it means. It stems from Pony Boy Curtis, an obvious queerbaiter, right? And it describes a genre of pornography that for some reason always takes place on a ranch. And if you go to ASSTR.org and you search for Ponyboy, they've removed it from all the tags. So it's hard to find Ponyboy, right? But after spending about 40 minutes at it, I found an authentic Ponyboy story circa like 1997, and I wanted to share it with you. So, the summation was done by Copilot, incidentally. Okay, so I'm gonna have to blow up the font. I'm blind on sec. Fuck it, 16 points. Well, let's stay right stutter. Let me make sure the audio is light's moving because that'd be. There we go, audio capture, yeah. Okay, there we go. No, that's a mouse. Okay. The most horrible day I ever lived through was the day my lifelong friend Christopher Worthington was enslaved for life at the age of 22, just 4 months before he and I would graduate from SDSU with our bachelor's in chemistry. On the evening of April 3rd, 2010, my dad told me to cancel. Oh, this is up to date, Pony Boy, huh? On the evening of April 3rd, 2010, my dad told me to cancel my plans for the next day because he and I had something very important to do. When I asked him what it was, he said he could not tell me, and I would simply have to wait till tomorrow to find out. Next morning over breakfast, my dad told me what was up. I reacted with stunned disbelief to what he told me, and because of what I was eventually to witness on that day, a strange trance-like numbness stayed with me for several months. And even now, on thinking of the events, I revert to a haze, unable to believe that it really happened. Christopher Worthington and I were friends since the age of 6. When we became neighbors, our parents supported our friendship, but they themselves became especially close with one each other. Mr. Worthington was a successful businessman who stayed pretty much to himself, but he cared very much about appearances, not only about how he and his family appeared in men's eyes, but how he appeared financially in the eyes of others as well. Indeed, Christopher was always neatly dressed, even at casual sporting events. His hair was always very neatly combed and his manners impeccable. He and I grew up together and shared everything. We even decided, after much uncertainty, to drop our first choices for colleges so we could just attend San Diego State University together. We had a great time in college. These were the happiest days of our life together yet, even after the many good times we had shared. We were best friends for life, or so we thought. My dad told me that Mr. Worthington had contacted him only 3 days ago with news of his plan, and he was to keep it under wraps. He told my dad that he was letting him in on his plans because he knew that Christopher and I were lifelong friends. He wanted me to be present when he announced the decision to Christopher so that I could offer some support throughout the day and help him get through the ordeal. Mr. Worthington had fallen on hard times. He was in danger of losing the family business. Under California law, children over the age of 18 who have not served in the armed forces or state National Guard before the age of 26 are subject to what is called lex talionis restrictions, which means they still do not have full rights of an adult, but they are no longer considered minors. Thus, parents have the legal authority to enslave for a profit a freeborn child. They can prove that they no longer have the means to care for the child, and that the child fails to meet at least 3 criteria of lex talionis requirements. In Christopher's case, he had a burn misdemeanor rap on his civil record for shoplifting. He also he had no record of civic volunteer duty. He had more than 3 traffic violations. Therefore, Christopher and his father's orders were sold into slavery. I was stunned. Dad tried to reassure me, saying that there's nothing we could do to prevent it, but that I could help in some small way by being at Christopher's side throughout the day. He knew he was to be enslaved and processed. It would be at his house when his dad announced that his life as he knew it was over. I would accompany him to the slave processing center and wait for him. And afterwards, I would accompany him when he was delivered to Arthur Baldwin, who bought him in the news estate he was to serve. If I did these things for Christopher, then I was doing all I could possibly do. I heard the name of Arthur Baldwin. The weakness that possessed me suddenly turned to hopelessness. Arthur Baldwin owned Baldwin Fletcher Enterprises. His chief concern was the Fletcher farm and canneries. Baldwin ran the cannery and farms almost entirely on slave labor, and the overseers of the slave teams were Baldwin's 2 sons, Arnold and Retcher. If Arnold Baldwin had had a reputation as a cold-hearted businessman, his sons had the reputation through the valley of this vicious sadists who delighted in punishing and humiliating their slaves. They were young, probably only about 6 or 7 years older than Christopher and I, but had reputations that far surpassed their years. I remember how Christopher and I used to share stories we had heard about the Baldwin sons, and just 2 months ago, we had seen them in town, each with a slave on a leash, dressed in his clown outfits, wearing large double dunce caps, and sandwich boards proclaiming, "I was caught idling on the front side. Please spit on me on the back." Christopher called out to them on that occasion, saying that they were filthy slavers who deserved to rot in hell. I still remember the Retcher boys looking back and saying, "Oh, it's cute-ass Worthington. Man, I'd love to have that pony in my car." That pony pulling my car, excuse me. Um, I cried and told my dad it was injustice. He tried to comfort me. As he embraced me, I thought of all the times I'd seen Mr. Worthington embrace Christopher. That morning, Dad and I ate breakfast in silence. He told me that and I had to be at Worthington's by 11 a.m. since Christopher's appointment with the slave processing center was at 12:30. Mr. Worthington wanted things to go fast. After he announced his intentions to his son, and he got the final signature from Mr. Baldwin, Mr. Worthington pretty much wanted Christopher wished out of his house for good. The plan was that I would then accompany Christopher with police escort to the processing arena, and then afterwards to accompany the drudge, which slaves were called in California, along with 2 requisition officers to the Baldwin slave compound. Dad and I arrived at Mr. Worthington's house at 11:15. Mr. Baldwin was already there, holding a folder stuffed with papers. Also in attendance were Trevor Humphreys, Arnold and Retcher's chief overseer assistants at the ranch, and 2 plainclothes men from the police department. California is one of the few states that do not have special police units for maintenance of slaves. It's still a liberal state, and slaves' rights people have maintained that slaves are not a different sort of human being requiring any special policing. Because of the liberal trend in general along the West Coast, private family ownership of slaves is still relatively rare. Slaves in the West are owned and maintained chiefly by corporations and the prison system. I was introduced to Mr. Baldwin, and any fears that built in me that he was a monster were immediately dispelled by seeing his genuine greeting, accompanied by a broad smile and firm handshake. As Mr. Worthington surprisingly looked like an evil person to me, and the very rigid in demeanor, with distant gaze and eyes perhaps intensified by nervousness over a situation. He thanked me for being willing to be at Christopher's side throughout the rest of the day. Trevor Humphreys seemed to be the kind of man one would expect to bring calm and sobriety to any situation. In his mid-30s, dressed as a blue blazer and tie, well-groomed, he exuded a wholesomeness that was rare to those who handled slaves on a daily basis. Also present was Christopher's brother Dexter. Dexter was 3 years older than Christopher, and the 2 of them never got along. Dexter was always blaming Christopher when things went wrong, and got him into a lot of trouble through the years. Christopher got the rap when Dexter was apprehended for shoplifting some CDs once. Christopher always felt Dexter disliked him because he was jealous. I nodded to Dexter, and he smiled back. He was the only person present who did not seem somewhat apprehensive. Indeed, he seemed to be in good spirits. I started to say to Mr. Worthington, "Isn't there some?" My dad pulled me aside and bent down and whispered, "Todd, I told you there's nothing we can do to change the course of things. What you can do is just be with Christopher throughout this day." This little interruption seemed to make everyone more nervous, and Mr. Worthington, who had been glancing his watch throughout the introductions, started glancing even more frequently. It was 11 o'clock. He looked at us and said, "Well, it's time. Are we ready?" That's from the plainclothes policeman and Mr. Baldwin. "Fine, I'll go get Christopher." My dad and I were nervous. I felt like I could cry at any moment. Within minutes, Mr. Worthington and Christopher entered the room. On seeing me, Christopher smiled and said, "Hey, Todd, you go along with Dad and me to dispenses for lunch?" His dad answered, "Christopher, we're not going to lunch at Spence's. Will you come here, please?" Christopher was still unaware of anything. Anything was up and was smiling went to the man beside his dad. The two plainclothes policemen got up and took places on either side of Christopher. "Christopher, I've decided to make some changes around here in our lives. As you know, my business has failed and it needs capital to continue operations. Mr. Baldwin has very graciously offered to help me out. I have therefore accepted his payment for your lifetime services. Dad, hear me out, son. I, of course, could never allow you to be enslaved and sold at auction. It was only because of Mr. Baldwin's kind offer to keep you on his property I could see myself engaging in this course of action. But we both owe Mr. Baldwin a sincere show of gratitude for what he has done to help us both out. Dad, Christopher seemed to be having trouble understanding the full scope of things. His mouth was open. He was shaking his head. During the proceeding, Trevor Humphreys quietly took out a digital camera and started to take a few shots of the distressed Christopher. Mr. Baldwin then spoke up. "Well, gentlemen, I have a meeting in a little while. I just need to sign one final paper and complete the task. And the medical records are in order. And seeing Christopher up close, I can see that my sons were correct. And I told them Christopher might be up for sale and asked them for their opinions. They both said he seemed like a super investment and urged me to secure the goods in haste. But because you have been keeping that under wraps, Mr. Worthington, understandably so, in these conditions, of course, I did not have the access to the usual pre-purchase full-body photographs. So therefore, as usual, I would like a quick view of the rest of Christopher, if you don't mind. I just want to see what I'm paying for to make sure my goods are in order and there are no surprises." "Of course, Mr. Baldwin, I insist on this myself," said Mr. Worthington. "Christopher, remove your clothing." Christopher didn't seem to hear, and Mr. Worthington raised his voice. "Christopher, I'm not telling you again, remove your clothing." Mr. Baldwin sounded reassuring. "No, no, Mr. Worthington, no need for harshness. It's understandable that the newly drudged aren't aware of what codes of conduct are required of them. That's why they are thoroughly professionally sorted of training my boys will offer Christopher is just a balm to our slaves. The judges are giving clear guidelines. They know where we stand and where they stand. But anyway, continue Mr. Baldwin, giving a slight nod to the plainclothesman. I am in need of something of a hurry here, so if we could just move on." With a nod, one of the plainclothesmen grabbed Christopher's right arms, pulled it from his head service belt, what looked like a piece of cylindrical metal tubing, and placed it over his thumb. They started to gradually turn the tube top portion of the cylinder. We watched Christopher's face as he turned the screw. Suddenly Christopher screamed as it scalded with boiling hot oil. "Take it off, please, take it off." The plainclothesman said, "We'll take it off just as soon as you get out of every stitch of your clothing." With this, Christopher tore into removing his clothing. With fury, he cried in pain, practically kicking his clothes off, tearing his trouser bottoms off. "A Christmas present to him from my dad in order to remove it in haste," wildly flailing to get his t-shirt off under his clothes, which was totally bare before all of us, and crouching in a kneeling position, trying to cover his crotch. With one hand, he stuck his thumb screwed hand into the air and screamed, "Take it off, take it off." The officer was quick to remove the thumb screw, leaving a sobbing, crouching Christopher, trembling in confusion as he rubbed his injured thumb with moans. Through all this, Mr. Humphreys had been calmly clicking away with his digital camera. The officers then pulled up Christopher by the shoulders. Dexter was wide-eyed with excitement, his mouth open, the bulge showing in his crotch. Christopher tried to cover his genitals, but his arms were swiftly and firmly pulled out from behind by the officers, leaving him totally bare for all of us to see. "Now, boy, don't you worry," assured Mr. Baldwin. "It's always amusing to me to see how the newly judged are so full of modesty. You'll get over that in no time. We work the majority of the slaves on the field duty, and in many parts of the cannery totally nude except for work boots. You'll get over being around the clothed non-slave employees in no time." About one quarter of our cannery workforce, regular freeman employees, is a very good arrangement. They help us keep tabs on the slave force. Christopher's head was bowed. Tears rolled down his face as Humphreys advanced slightly, shooting the exposed, distraught lad. And judging from the looks of you, you will make one fine hard labor product. Yes, very nice indeed, approved Mr. Baldwin as he walked up to Christopher and more closely examine his purchase. To most closely examine his purchase, he ran his hand over Christopher's chest and tweaked his nipples. A good, solid piece of merchandise, good shape, and a nice waggle on you too, boy. He took Christopher's penis in his hand and weighed it, indicating it to Humphreys. Get a good shot of this, he said. But Christopher continued, this thing I'm holding isn't going to be of very much use to you anymore. There's one thing we do not allow at Baldwin Fletcher is any form of sexual release, and that includes masturbation. Dexter went out with it. Wow, cool, man. Everybody ignored him. The Humphreys took a few close-ups of Christopher and Christopher's unit, and Mr. Worthington expressed his discomfort at the delays. Gentlemen, isn't this going to be a plenty of time afterwards to photograph your new purchase? Actually, Mr. Worthington replied, Trevor, there isn't. We need photos of Christopher before his processing. As I've required a few body modifications today, in order to insist on a complete pre-processing photo record of all the raw material on the slave team. Okay, so where are we? We're about, it looks like 8% of the way through. I need to drink water for a bit. Well, if you're worried, there's nothing really coming. There's no sex in these stories, which is what makes them especially creepy. Um, oh yeah. So anyway, when I was a young child, my mother made my brother and I ride our bikes up to the pool every summer. There's 2 summers from this different schools for swimming lessons. A few summers after that, they put up an arcade by many golf courses within bike range. So the RV program, that's a fun game. No, I like cornflakes. Most cold cereals, in fact. Not so much the sweet stuff. I will eat it. And there's hot cereals, like the variety pack of oatmeal. I have four of them and they're all the same. Don't lose your enthusiasm. I hope you're holding on to it because it does get interesting. Okay. All right. Mr. Baldwin continued. Oh, sorry. Mr. Baldwin continued, as I was saying, Christopher, my boys deal very severely with those afflicted with any habit of masturbation. Mr. Baldwin finally let go of Christopher's penis, walked back to where he was standing, saying, I just offer you that as a fair warning. My boys are very stern on that issue because they say that judges who do not engage in such habits and pursuits are much more productive in a labor intensive work environment. They turn a higher profit. My boys are concerned with the labor efficiency of the entire team. An efficient labor intensive team producing a top yield creates an environment that's pleasing to all involved. Mr. Baldwin was a real slaver who saw slavery only from a business angle and over over that angle he tended to enthuse. But on this particular day his enthusiasm for business talk was to the distress of almost everyone in the room, especially the poor Christopher. Only textures, Bobby and shifty and wide-eyed, open-mouthed excitement. Mr. Humphries looked sideways at Dexter and then took a discreet snapshot of his wide-eyed older brother. Now, Christopher, Mr. Baldwin continued, you should be flattered to learn that you did not come cheap. Especially since, as you probably know, your father sold you as a hard labor product. That means I paid. That means I paid almost three times for what I paid to even offered as a standard graded product. Mr. Worthington turned red as sweat ran down his forehead. Now that's good for you and bad for me. It's good for you because it means that you as a hard labor product can be worked up to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, whereas a standard labor product can be only be worked up to 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. It's been proven much more that hard labor judges are far more content than standard labor judges. Their minds are more occupied. The suicide rate for labor slaves is only about, keep in mind it's pornography, right? For hard labor slaves is only about half that of the standard team slaves. My dad interjected in a feeble voice. Now wait 1 second, Mr. Baldwin. Mr. Baldwin, God just drones on and on. If I can find some action, there isn't any. There isn't any. When the plane goes off, let's see when it gets to the slave processing facility. Um, At the end of your ride down the processing rail, you'll merge a new being with a new life, and you're going to look very different from the way you do now. You'll no longer need ever again for your fancy clothes or hair gel. You no longer have to worry about keeping up with the latest fashion styles. You'll be totally shaved all over, denuded, have rings and piercings all over the place. There'll be a slave collar placed around your neck. For your cock and balls will be tightly cinched and attached to your cock ring now. In place of a laminated card, there will now be a slave bell, a sign of hard labor slave, life or slave, a very important accoutrement to the lifer and hard product, injected Mr. Humphreys. Indeed, continued Mr. Baldwin, we have a brand new use for your penis. Rather than you playing with it or some girlfriend playing with it, it's going to be used to let my boys know you're doing your job and keeping busy. No more playing with it yourself, because your penis is now going to be nothing but an attachment for your slave bell. It's just adorable. And queers masturbate to this. It's insane. Oh God, they're ashamed of it now. You can't even use the word pony boy. Oh, the wine like it's so funny talking more some other time. I won't talk. You can hear me my voice, right? So, but here's what I'm gonna do. Because I gotta make this accessible, obviously, right? Um, get your. Well, you can just pause it and write it down later, right? Um, hopefully this works. Copy link to this notebook. Okay, let's see. I'll put this in the description. Oops. And see, I'm all about Pony Boy. That's been there for me. That's what actually appears. Yeah, and you'll have to wait for each individual one to load. And I'll put the link in there and the date, which is, I've had this for a while, October 2022, um, October 31, 2022, 12:45 a.m. Okay, so enjoy, and if you jerk off, shut your one sick fuck, gay or not, right? Yeah, that's it.